Those who haven't met me before, my name's Gary Scher. I'm the Marine Education Facilitator at National Parks Association, and with a very big team of helpers, we've got this together today. So thank you for everyone who's participated. Okay, now I'm going to split people up into workshops. You've actually already split yourself up into them. You've been very passive and listened to some great ideas and I hope been stimulated by it. I think it's almost had a revivalist sort of feel to some parts of it. And different speakers, in fact all speakers have, I think have empowered us well and truly to know that despite the fact it's been a really long road, the first National Marine Park proposal for Sydney was actually about 24 years ago, before the Marine Parks Act was instituted. And our branch in southern Sydney actually wrote that for the area around Port Hacking and Royal National Park. But now it's spread beyond that to a bigger picture idea, and we're only too happy to be part of it. But it takes hard yards, as Phil very eloquently pointed out. Okay, so here's a chance to not just be passive, but to use your collective wisdom. I'm sorry I didn't in the workshop names put an action word in everyone, but when I started looking at it, I see there's words like engaging divers and other interest groups, engaging youth in marine conservation, mobilising the masses through social media, protection for charismatic species, converting for conservation, transforming small aquatic reserves into the things we've been talking about that we know work, learning from Indigenous elders. So there's all these action words, and it's so many people have said to me over the years, and I'm sure some scientists and others have had this said to them too, oh Gary, you're so good at that, you go ahead and do that, you know, you be the chair, you go and do that, you represent us. But within this room is so much intellectual and social capacity that I really believe that you can produce something that's worthwhile at the end of this 40 minutes or so that you've got to put your heads together. Now, you've chosen to do different workshops. The numbers are on the tables. Can you turn those numbers around so I can see them? The numbers on the tables correspond to the numbers on the workshops. And as you go out to get your last cup of tea or coffee, and probably afternoon tea because I know you'll be famished, check out the number of the workshop and attach yourself to the appropriate table. Number 11 is the learning from Indigenous elders. We've only got 10 tables, so maybe if that group can find a space either out on the balcony or just outside in the foyer, just to sort of spread things out a bit. So check out your numbers. If you don't check it out up there, look in your blue folders and you'll find your workshop numbers from 1 to 11 in case you've forgotten what you've done. But look, all workshop facilitators have their very simple instructions to take you through, to share what we can celebrate, to look at what challenges there are within your area of your workshop, but thirdly, to suggest some hows. And when you choose your spokesperson at the end of this 40 minutes or so, that person is simply going to enunciate the 2 or 3 big ideas. Now, the ideas that don't get a chance to get summarised, we're going to collect all those from you, we're going to write them up, I'm going to edit them into some sort of usable version, and everyone is going to get copies of it to use within your communities or with your political people who you talk to try to advance the sort of aims that we've been talking about today. So that's the way we're approaching it. So go and grab your cuppa, come back, find a spot. If you find that there's every workshop will be running, there's some with only 2 or 3 people on it, but they're 2 or 3 very good people. If you can see that there's 9 or 10 on your desk, think about the idea of going to one that's a little bit less crowded, because you will have good ideas for everyone, I'm sure.
Are we going first?
Yep, over there, thanks. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Gary. So I guess our vision was to come up with a well-designed, well-managed marine park from Broken Bay down to the Royal National Park, and the vision, that 5-year vision, is that 30% marine sanctuary zones within that marine park. So that was our kind of overall objective, I suppose. Mm-hmm. In terms of how we get there and what the strategy was, we kind of came up with the collective campaign, if you like, and that was simply more fish for Sydney. That's what we want. We just want more fish for everyone. Mm-hmm. And then obviously the way to achieve that is through the aforementioned marine park and sanctuary zones. But we wanted those zones to benefit everybody, all the stakeholders, all the marine users, not just the divers and the snorkelers, but the fishers and all those interested groups.
Yeah, I think that's a very wise comment, because the fishers often point out that we are anti-fishing, they are fishers, we are conservationists. We got called the Greens running this rally today. But yeah, if we're all inclusive and say there's something in it for everybody and you're not going to be locked out, I think that's a very good message to make sure we are consistent with. Okay, thanks for that group. Group number 2 is under the facilitation of Dr. Carolyn Hoisington, formerly of the Centre for Policy Development and now a SIMS Research Fellow, visiting fellow at SIMS on the economic values. And this was on the economic and social values of marine protection. Strangely enough, they voted me in to give the report. So thank you, that's fine. All right, where are we today and what has worked well to date? Well, I think we thought of the idea of Coffs Harbour, Solitary Islands and all the gloom and doom. You know, economists like to predict things, but sometimes you can do an activity like create a marine park and do research years later compared to what things used to be before the marine park. And you actually, as they have found out through the Chamber of Commerce, industry has not gone, tourism has not gone backwards. It's at the very least stayed the same and very probably improved somewhat. There has been no marine-based business that has really got lost, went downhill on the basis of that marine park declaration, for example. Cabbage Tree Bay was another, what has worked well? Cabbage Tree Bay. It's got many tourists there, and there's anecdotally that there's a lot from overseas, so even a small place like that does attract people. The idea of it being TripAdvisor's #1 beach was quite astounding, and this surely has economic benefits. We seem to believe anecdotally that little cafes around the region are probably doing quite well out of just that declaration. So, you know, on a bigger scale, the economics, we believe, will show very positive trends. Now, the vision, where do we want to be in 5 years' time? The big thing about economics is economics depends on having good data about biological values, for example. So the science has to be extremely good for economists like Carolyn to be able to model the values of that improvement in biological biodiversity. So, you know, we're all in this together. No one is an island in this. We bounce off each other and depend on each other. The idea, notice our workshop was economic and social values. Even if you can't quantify the value of social values, we should document when decision making is taking place the real social values that people find in the concept of conservation of the marine world, and we need to sell it well to our political people. The roadmap, I think we would all like to see the model used for Cabbage Tree Bay. I think we can all learn from that, from a smaller scale that's been extremely successful up to the bigger scale and the challenges that we've got now. The other big idea about the roadmap that was suggested was don't get aligned with any one group. We need consensus about what is right and objective, and we will always lose if we think that one particular party is going to do something better than some other party. I had it signed in blood 22 years ago that there would be a marine park off Royal National Park by Pam Allen, and then Minister for Environment. Guess what? We're fighting for it right now, still. It's bigger, but we're still fighting for it. That'll do me, folks. I think I've taken more than enough time. Okay, the third workshop, number 3, was Better Business, the local business argument for marine protection. Now, Richard Nichols was the facilitator, and who's going to talk?
I think it's going to be me.
Oh, Richard, didn't think you would.
Well, I think almost everything we've got down here, you've just talked about. I mean, I think we've all got the same vision. You know, we talked about showcasing Cabbage Tree Bay as a successful model because nothing breeds success like success. And that's a combination of everybody coming together. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't just the divers, but it was the snorkelers and the swimmers, and all of Manly's benefited from that. Where do we want to be in 5 years' time? Well, we all want a marine park for Sydney. I mean, I'd like it tomorrow. And not just a marine park, but with some scientific base, some social base, and some some economic-based no-take zones, so we really can make a difference. And also, I suppose, because I love Cabbage Tree Bay so much, I'd like to see an extension of Cabbage Tree Bay, because it's only one small little kilometre, and it could be, legitimately, it could be a little bit further, and that would make a difference. How are we going to accomplish these? Well, we've been effective using the Chamber of Commerce and getting the Chamber of Commerce's support behind the amnesty for fishing and marine sanctuaries. We've worked in great partnerships with conservation groups and with community groups, and that's been sort of a bit of a first, I think, for all of us. So we've got some fantastic support, from a whole lot of different areas. And I think also at the end of the day, we just want to remind people that, if you as a business or an individual say, I'll just leave it to other people, what you're going to do is just leave it. So we're just going to say, get involved and do something. Because if you say, well, I'll just leave it, someone else is doing that, then you just end up doing nothing at the end of the day. So I suppose that's our overriding message.
Thank you very much, Richard, and the group. The fourth one is engaging youth in marine conservation. Will Jones's group, and looks like it's Will has got the mic.
Okay, thanks for that. So engaging youth in marine conservation, and we were very fortunate to have the only youth in the room. He was 13 years old, bless his cotton socks, young Ryan, and he gave some really good feedback, which was excellent. So he was very much engaged in marine conservation, no less. Tick, done. Okay, no. So it started because of that, and his mum was there as well. So it started with so where are we today? So formal education. He's doing marine studies, which is a marine studies syllabus that was brought in about 6-7 years ago by the Marine Teachers Association in New South Wales, and it came from Marine Teachers Association in Queensland. So that's been brought formally into the syllabus. It is very much a niche, but it is activating some of those really keen people who are really keen in the thing. Not so much, not directly in marine conservation, but in marine anyways. And then the informal connections. Got somebody who's a friend of a friend. And those informal connections, my mum does this, my friend does that, seem to be working quite well, and seeding people into new groups. And then actually the people joining these incorporated groups had a great example of the mud crabs down at the Cooks River. And I think the big thing about that, what's worked well, is that it has worked well. The lady was saying over the last 25 years, the Cooks River is a different place. It's not a dirty canal full of rubbish anymore. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There's a good news story, and good news story seems to have come up in every single thing in that. So I think that's an important thing. And events for families is a key way of getting them involved. They had involving families involved, and like for cleanups and things like that, bringing children in to the thing. So yeah, formal and informal, but keeping the hope aspect up and trying to bring signage in for infrastructure. The vision, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? So I think the hard thing in terms of engaging youth, and in fact engaging anybody in marine conservation, is them actually knowing that it's there. There just seems to be such a dearth of awareness that there is a marine world in Sydney. I mean, if you did a survey, it seems to be, it's just that the awareness is not there. So building on that is very, very hard. So bringing that more into the formal and the informal aspect. So the ladies liked the Barangaroo story. Thought that was excellent, bringing the marine life into big developments and actually highlighting that with those plant pots and stuff like that. Thought that was an excellent way of doing it. And also value adding, you've got the intertidal protected area that's got the sculpture walk on it at the moment, but nothing on the sculpture walk is actually telling people about the intertidal area that they're walking around. So value adding these existing events that are and piggybacking on them. Obviously more numbers of fish and more species, but having more funding flowing through into marine science and marine education and awareness programs so that people actually know about it. And I think the key thing that is normalised, that's what the lady was saying, was that she would know that this has worked if it's normal. If people are not going, that's amazing. People are going, yeah, I know about that. That's so cool. And then the roadmap, social media seems to be something that crops up all the time, but instead of people doing it, actually trying to get the youth to own it and for them to push the messages out so that they're driving it. Valuing the events and the developments, which was good, and then doing a lot of this before and after stuff. We've got some good data sets now, good photos that show, hey, this project worked in the Cooks River. Looks what it looked like then, look what it looks like now. Cabbage Tree Bay, look what it looked like then, look what it looks like now. So it's pushing the good news story, getting people involved in citizen science and the programs like Reef Life Survey and the climate thing for the rock platforms. And then in the formal world, more professional development for teachers. The National Curriculum Review has just happened, which is rather disturbing that they're talking about trying to remove science and sustainability from the primary curriculum, which hopefully that won't actually happen, but never mind. There's a thing in the States called ocean literacy, which is a big news over there, is getting people to be actually literate about the marine world, because basically the situation is at the moment, people are illiterate. They don't know that it exists. And if they don't know that it exists, it's really hard to engage them in the conservation of something they don't know exists. It's kind of a circular argument.
Now, we need to move on, Will. So would you...
And the last thing is an advice for groups like NPA, who have a fairly greying demographic, is have a bring a grandchild. Bring a grandchild day. We like that.
Righto. Thank you very much. Okay. Workshop 5 is the role of local friends groups in marine conservation, and Robin Millyard set up the exhibition over here on that. Is it Robin who's speaking? Or?
Jenny.
Good.
Jenny.
Okay, thanks.
Will has said most of the things we were going to say, but firstly, as the situation now, the present is, as we discussed it, the Friends arrangement has worked very well with Cabbage Tree Bay, and we think that that would be a good model to continue. It has increased not just awareness of the local issue, but also of marine conservation in general and conservation in general. So that is the positive thing that's going ahead. There are a lot of challenges, one of which, for example, is that the local people can keep an eye on the place, but at night it doesn't work so well, so it's not going perfectly, but it has worked well. Our vision is that there would be links and coordination along the coast of all these friends groups, and that the locals have a greater sense of ownership of their local area, and also that there would be institutional support for friends groups, because that has happened with Cabbage Tree Bay, and that there would be that continuing. Institutional support for friends groups, for example, council allocating funds and staff to help them.
Yep.
And the third thing, the mechanism, again, institutional support and SMS network for all local conservation groups to use if there's an event that they can use to alert people. Training for volunteers is something which needs to be done carefully, and conservation awareness for children in school. And that's about it.
Right. Good. Thank you very much for that. That's great. And yeah, we'll give ourselves all a mutual clap at the end of all this, I can tell, because there's some great ideas coming through. Now, did Group 6 and 7 amalgamate, or was it another group? No, number 6, mobilising the masses through social media. Shani Connell. Now, I just forget the exact figures, but Shani, through her social media, she can tell the story. I'm sure it's a good news story she's going to tell, or one of you. Okay, thanks very much.
What did you want me to talk?
Yeah, how many people you got on that beach about those sharks?
Oh, okay. Back in February, we managed to get nationally 10,000 people to actually stand up against the shark culling in WA, which was really cool, which was the most number of people that actually stood up for one single species of animal ever, so that was cool. Manly Beach, we got 2,500. So that was... And it just did itself because it was already going viral in the media. So, but we just jumped on board with Facebook and it went crazy. Yeah. We got 2,500. Yeah, we cull sharks in New South Wales. So since then, we've actually jumped on board with WA. So now we have a chapter in each state. So we have no New South Wales shark cull, which I'm in charge of, and we've got no Queensland shark cull and no WA shark cull.
Yeah, when we had about 20 people booked in for this seminar, I was thinking of contacting you to say, how can you get 2,000 for us? Anyway, sorry.
To be honest, yeah, it sort of just went viral. So I think it's hard with social media. You can't sort of generate something that doesn't already exist. And because it was already going viral in the media, and the wonderful job that WA did, and just really good timing, we just jumped on board that was already trending. So yeah, we tried to replicate it again in September and have another rally, and we kind of got 1,000 people. So. And it took twice as much effort. So, yeah, I think timing is everything.
Can you tell us what the effort involved? Like, I'm interested how you got 2,000 or 10,000.
I pretty much just use the strategy of saturation bombing. That's what I like to call it. And it really starts to annoy all your friends after a while, because all you do is literally post until, you know, they're absolutely sick to death of it. And you join every single group you possibly can that's try not to annoy too many people. I got some feedback today from a group, no more posting about sharks. So that's cool, we can take that on board.
And what worked best, Facebook or emails or what?
Facebook was really, really good, but they've actually changed the way that they do things now, so they actually want people to pay. So it was really fantastic in February, and then kind of March, April, it just got choked. It used to be if you were part of a group, you actually received every single notification that someone put in that group. Now, I think it's about 5 or 7% go out. So, and you'll notice that with your friends too. Like, if you don't like, share, comment on your friends' pages for a while, or their things, you'll actually stop seeing their stuff. And then you'll think, oh, I've got a friend, hang on, I'll go and look at their profile, and you'll find they've gotten married or they've had a baby and stuff, and like, you haven't been receiving their posts. So yeah, Facebook's not as good as it used to be, and we're sort of talking about the fact that maybe Instagram will be the one that will take over from Facebook. Maybe not Twitter. Maybe Tumblr. We don't know.
What the hell's Tumblr? Yeah, so that's why we got you along here, to try to scope all those sort of things that got the numbers in. Thanks very much.
But I think one of the things you've got to do with social media is to make sure it is social. It can't just be a one-way thing. You've got to make sure that it's interactive. Mm-hmm. So we came up with one idea was to do a lot of vlogging, or get divers or people to vlog, or to actually send stuff to Instagram, and to use this thing called the hashtag. So it might be what was it? Hashtag Sydney Harbour Marine Park. Yeah, so someone might be out and about, and they might take an awesome underwater picture of something happening at Cabbage Tree Bay, and then they'll write, oh, Cabbage Tree Bay is amazing, this should be the whole of Sydney Harbour. Hashtag, Sydney Harbour Marine Park. Or someone can take a photo of something really bad and say, this is terrible, chuck on Instagram, hashtag. Mm-hmm. So it's getting the people to do the work for you, as opposed to you having to do it all. Yep. And then another idea we had was to actually, because the thing that annoys me so much is all the different rules about fishing. So here you can do this and there you can't do that, and who knows what the rules are. If you had an app on your phone which was like a location-based thing, so you can say, all right, I'm here right now and I'm standing next to a fisherman, what are the rules? What can they and can't they do? And so you can actually call them out on things, or they can actually look at it and go, oh, they're the rules, rather than just...
I think we're going to get you in for some training for NPA and other groups, by the sounds of it. No, I see our designer, and very often does a lot of marketing for us, Kieran and Tandy over there. I'm sure they're looking on with recognition and thinking of the new options for the future. Put your hand up, Kieran and Tandy, please. They've been two of the great marketing promoters with other help of this conference, so thank you for that. I acknowledge that. Okay, we better move on then. Thanks, Shani, that's brilliant. All right, the next one, now is this 7 by itself, coordinating networks to accomplish marine outcomes. This is Judy and her team from, Judy Rises from the Manly Environment Centre, Daisy Barham, who's the campaign manager for NCC, and Sue Milthorpe, who's the new marine campaigner at NCC. Who's speaking on behalf of your group there?
I'll start with the first two, and then I'm going to hand over to Daisy.
Okay, Sue, then Daisy. Thanks, Sue.
So we looked at the current situation and we assessed it as basically being very positive. There's a lot of groups working on this and there's lots of momentum. So we're in a space that has already got a lot of impetus behind it. We've got a national coalition for marine parks, but one thing we thought was that we needed more coordination, particularly of resources and at a strategy level and terminology level at the Sydney, as part of the Sydney campaign. In terms of our vision, it got slightly complex, so this is a bit of a public service type sentence, and I do apologise. Deep breath. Within a year, the government will declare and begin the process of defining a Sydney Harbour Marine Park with the primary goal of protecting Sydney's marine environment. But this park will sit within a holistic strategy which cares for and manages Sydney's cultural and environmental landscape. And the governance and design processes for this park will be defined by community access to decision making and decision makers, and by real and valued input to design and ongoing management, so ongoing management processes.
Do you mind if NPA grabs that and says that we did it ourselves?
That's fine.
I think that's a pretty good vision and some words very well thought out there, so thanks for your efforts. Yeah, great. Okay.
Hi, I'm Alicia. I'm just going to do the last section, the roadmap. So
Alicia.
we had a few ideas. Coming up to the next election, having a forum of politicians to answer questions representing all the different groups. We wanted to call together the groups from Save Our Marine Life to basically have a subcommittee for Sydney Marine Park. And we also wanted to have some celebrity champions and business champions, so that basically it was like industry-led as well. One of the other ideas we had was to engage the fishing community, which may be the most opposition that we have at the moment. So there's things coming up like the New South Wales game fishing comp that we could get along to, and maybe even bringing divers and fishers together so that we can show them that we want the same thing. We want big fish. So everyone wants to see them and everyone wants to catch them. So we just have to achieve it together. And so I just saw this other note here about making a video as well, which basically getting a presentation out to fishing clubs, More Fish for Sydney, Friends of Cabbage Tree Bay, getting them all together to do a video, something like that, like a presentation.
Sounds interesting.
Great.
And Daisy, you wanted to say something too, did you? No. Oh, you're right. Okay. Thanks to that group. The next one, protection for charismatic species, e.g. whale, sharks and penguins. We've got orca well represented here. I don't know whether Shauna or Rachel is going to speak on behalf of that group.
I'm Rachel.
Righto, good Rachel, thanks.
Okay, so we were talking about protection for charismatic species, and we kind of added a few more into that. So we started off with whales, sharks and penguins, and we also added dolphins, seals, sea dragons and turtles, because they came up in our discussion and we felt that they were worthy of mention. So in terms of the current situation, what we all agreed in our group, we did have another member who's left, so it wasn't just the three of us. What we agreed is that there has been some really good, strong education in communities. That hasn't necessarily come from, governmental sources, but it has come from organisations in some ways. There's been some really good advancement in terms of comprehensive legislation, and we were particularly talking about the legislation for whales in terms of really clear guidelines about what is and isn't okay in terms of approaches and spending time with whales. In terms of our vision, where we wanted to be in 5 years' time was about enforcement of that legislation. So recognition that the legislation is really great, it's really proactive, but that it's not enforced. And partly that is because it's not enforced by government, but also because people don't have education to know why the legislation's important. There was a couple of other things in terms of where we want to be in 5 years, and that was a lot about having less marine debris, also more research in terms of whether things like shark nets are actually effective, because we talked a lot about marine entanglement with the charismatic species. So in terms of how we accomplish the vision that we spoke about, we came up with a few things. So more research into things like marine debris, into sharks, into whether or not shark nets are actually viable, and then legislation or regulation that actually enacts that research, and then the legislation being enforced. So we thought that would start with education, and particularly with children, so that they would then go home and tell mum and dad, hey, I learnt this about whales or dolphins or turtles, and we really shouldn't drop our rubbish or our fishing line over our boat when we go out on a Sunday. But also things like experiences, like we heard about today, people having experiences and opportunities for children to actually connect with nature, because once people connect with nature, then they'll try and conserve it. And we also had the idea of an enforcement app, so the information could be passed straight on to national parks, which would enable that regulations to be enforced.
Okay, some very interesting ideas. Thanks, Rachel. Number 9 is David Hempton from Bondi Mermaids. Looks like he's going to report. Converting for conservation, transforming small local aquatic reserves to achieve real protection. And I've seen it on the website, but you tell us about it yourself there,
well,
David.
It's great to have you all in the local neighbourhood. You know, there's so much lovely talk about Shelley Beach, and we all cry tears of disappointment in the eastern suburbs that we don't have a single area with similar such protection over here. So the unfortunate circumstances are that you can fish 100% of the eastern suburbs. You can fish from the city to Watson's Bay, all the way around to Bondi, all the way through the Bronte to Coogee Aquatic Reserve, all the way down to Botany. So I don't think anyone in their right mind would think that that's the correct sort of percentage in terms of maintaining biodiversity, let alone the opportunities of promoting tourism, let alone the opportunities for being able to see a essentially natural marine habitat in our area. So I suppose I've been working for about 6 years trying to promote the idea of having 3 areas in the eastern suburbs, Camp Cove and Watson's Bay, which is a very similar environment to Cabbage Tree Bay, in that it's a north-facing, sandy, gentle inclined area. A lot of people learn to scuba dive there. North Bondi, which is actually uniquely a west-facing reef on the east coast of New South Wales, and it's under intense pressure. And also, I just think it's ludicrous. You can fish in Bronte and Coogee Aquatic Reserve. It defies any logic whatsoever. But anyway, look, getting back to, I suppose, what we worked on, honestly, I started the sentiment just saying, look, this has been spectacularly unsuccessful, my campaign. I've been pushing it for years. I've been to that many meetings at Macquarie Street, that many meetings with the Department of Tourism, that many meetings with, from Luke Foley to Kate Fannin and I always take marine scientists with me, and I believe it's a very simple solution and great for tourism. You look at Time Out saying, top 10 things to do in Sydney, number 3 comes up, snorkel with a groper at Cabbage Tree Bay, and we have people down here fishing for them every day of the week. So I think it's a real tragedy. So I suppose getting back to this, I suggest that perhaps 2 out of 3 areas is where we'd like to see ourselves in 5 years. I don't think it'd be much to ask for 1%. I generally would like to say 3%, and hopefully the numbers that are thrown around with the idea of a Sydney Marine Park should be 10%, and if you ask Valerie Taylor, she'd say 30%. So let's, talk numbers at some stage, and I don't think any fisherman in their right mind could say, well, actually, you're right, 100% is not right. So anyway, one of the bigger problems I have, I suppose, which affects me in the 5 years, is actually the nomenclature of New South Wales. We're the only state that uses this no-take aquatic reserve, and nothing angers a fisherman worse than saying, hey, it's a no-take aquatic reserve. If you speak in Queensland or Victoria or anywhere else, they refer to it as a green zone or a fish rehabilitation zone, or anything else that screams positivity. A no-take aquatic reserve, it's terribly difficult for me to campaign on a bumper sticker, say, hey, we want more no-take aquatic reserves. It just doesn't work, and it's aggressive, and I just think the whole language, and also it speaks about it like it's a fisherman's asset. And it's not a fisherman's asset, it's a community asset. It's ours, And if it's a no-take aquatic reserve, who's that speaking to? Who owns it? And I just think the whole dialogue should change, and I've been saying this for 3 or 4 years. Don't know where I'm getting with it, but beating myself up. So that's one of my major things about it. Everyone thinks that the social media is the panacea for everything. I've got 1,000 likes on 2 different pages about marine sanctuaries in the eastern suburbs. I've got a database of 2,500 names. I've sat at North Bondi for 3 weeks in a row collecting 2,500 signatures. I've presented to them and written letters of submission to all the marine audits, the response to the marine audits. I've challenged Katrina Hodgkinson to go snorkelling on one day at Gordons Bay and then go Cabbage Tree Bay the same day and compare how desperate the situation is at Gordons Bay, where all these tourists go down to learn to scuba dive, and it's just the most disappointing area you could possibly go in your life. Anyway, it's great that, in the last year I've been diving in Belize, which is just south of Mexico, that has the second biggest Great Barrier Reef to the Great Barrier Reef. Fabulously well protected. They've got 3 massive keys there, 100% protected, tourism booming, absolutely going crazy. I've been in Raja Ampat in June this year, and I'm going again in January. Great protection, tourism booming, You got Manly, protection, tourism booming, there's just so many opportunities, and every time I'm diving in Asia, I think, oh, they do it so badly here. And I come back to Australia and we are worse.
David, can I interrupt you there? It sounds like a very passionate lot of frustrations that you've had over many years. But what has the group contributed to decrease your angst?
I suppose I just feel like I've been operating solo in this area. I don't get any support from dive shops, who I think it would be mostly in their interest. Right. But look, I organised an underwater petition signing at North Bondi last summer. And summer's a great time to do stuff. People feel very custodian of the sea, and around Christmas and January. But you've got to organise these things in January, in winter, to make them happen in summer. So I'd love to piggyback on other people's events, a Snorkel for Sanctuaries event. Someone could organise it. Awesome, get people on the water, get a media story, get it on Facebook. It gives me some content to put out to my social media, because I'm a bit bored of my own chat, So anyway...
you've got about half a minute, David.
No,
sorry.
That's fine. I'm really finished. So we've just really talked about, activating the supporters groups in the local community. I've dropped letters off to the local schools, big articles in the Sydney Morning Herald and local papers. My phone's just been, silent. Tumbleweeds. But anyway, look, I look forward to more events, and if anyone wants to contribute, help out, give us some advice, I'm all ears.
Look, David, I think when you get a lot of the recording of what has happened here and look at what people have been saying today, I think you'll find a lot of support for what you're trying to do. Yeah. So I really, really hope that many of the people here can link into the campaign you've been vainly trying to sort of push, and hope you get a bit more leverage out of it, because we need people like you who are passionate.
More content. More content.
Thanks very much. Alrighty. Now the second last group is engaging academic and citizen scientists in marine conservation. Facilitators were Dr. Inka Faulkner and Dr. Rick Stewart-Smith, who is speaking for the group.
Me.
Good on you, Oisin. Oisin is NPA's new scientist. He's only been here a few weeks, and the work is coming to him thick and fast. So thank you, Oisin.
No problem, thank you. We found in our group we had a little bit of frustration as well, in terms of a bit of a block between the citizen scientists, the people who are collecting the data around the place, and I guess the professional scientists or the other professional data gatherers. Whether this was a personality-driven thing, so the scientists being, I guess, too proud to engage with the plebs, or whether it's much more mundane in that the scientists have other priorities, lack of funds, blah, blah, blah. We identified a few reasons, which all could be possible. But it was very clear that what has worked well to date is well-designed programs that give citizens the opportunity to collect data that can then be analysed via statistical methodology, so that you can produce robust publications which then benefit both the scientists and the citizens. So I guess that problem of the data quality is paramount. In terms of where we want to be in 5 years' time, we felt that we really had a unique opportunity with a city the size of Sydney to have, untold numbers of citizen scientists, both monitoring a marine park in terms of biodiversity, but also potentially enforcement of of rules. And I guess what we'd like to see is initially the marine park, and then after that, a well-designed citizen science project that seeks to answer questions on the effectiveness of the marine park in, for example, protecting certain species or allowing greater biomass of fish on reefs. So we have a great opportunity in Sydney to achieve that, we thought. And how we accomplish it, well, we had a few ideas. Having someone like Inca in every scientific institution would be fantastic. So somebody who is a dedicated citizen science officer who then goes out to the various interest groups, the NGOs, the community groups, asks them what they're up to, brings that information back into the academic setting, meets with all the various, the relevant scientists, and I guess thrashes out what has to be done to bring those various programs up to the standard to which it's worth a scientist engaging with, i.e. that you can get some publications out of.
Sure.
So to that end, Inca very kindly offered to organise a forum next year.
Oh, fantastic.
You did offer, didn't you, Inca? Okay.
With NPA.
Oh, I didn't hear that bit. But yeah, so...
I can be consulted for a fee.
I'll keep that in mind, Gary. Thank you.
No worries.
Yep, so I guess that's us.
Thank you very much to that group. That's some very enlightening ideas there. Okay, last but not least, learning from Indigenous elders, original custodians of our environment. And it looks like Dominic is going to represent... No, they're still fighting over it. Away you go, Dominic. Dominic Canuck from Waverley Council.
I'd just like to, before I start, just formally thank National Parks Association for inviting us here today and putting on such a great forum.
Thanks a lot.
The ideas that came from our group, who were represented by Jill, Ted, Robert and Gabby, besides Professor Foley and myself. With the current situation, we said that there's been an obvious past exclusion of Aboriginal elders from marine environment type situations and marine management, and obviously the situation is changing. One of the ideas we had for improving the current situation was to seek out models of Aboriginal elder examples outside of Sydney and see what models worked, and then maybe, if they're applicable, start to use them in the Sydney marine management politic. We talked about engaging with Aboriginal lands councils, and Professor Foley gave a very recent example of where relationships between community and Aboriginal land councils has seen a positive change in the metropolitan area. Under the vision, we had that there needs to be obviously more Aboriginal involvement in looking after country on a broad scale. We gave examples of working with local councils as a way to look after our common environmental and ecological heritage. And we discussed a specific example of where our own survival is linked to the survival of, say, the sea dragon. And Professor Foley gave a more local example of that. On the roadmap, we said there obviously needs to be more engagement with the National Parks Association, with Aboriginal researchers and scientists, to talk about strategies with the NPA executive and the membership. And a practical way of doing that would be to obviously increase the membership and Aboriginal voices in the National Parks Association itself. And as a specific example on the roadmap, we talked about fishing techniques, and Professor Foley talked about a practice of using barbless hooks and lures as an alternative to current fishing practices as a practical strategy. So we hope those ideas have contributed to the forum in a positive way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dominic. And I think it's rather nice that we had our Aboriginal representation here at the beginning talking about the long-term values of a place like this and our oceans. I remember from years ago learning that there's a little archaeological thing, little tooly thing that's called a Bondi or Bondi Point. I think it was named after this area where it was found. So, you know, Aboriginal culture is an umbrella over everything in what we should do, I believe. And to finish it off with some comments like that, and I know our CEO would very much like to hear the idea of increasing membership. Everyone's struggling in conservation groups, and to have people like yourselves and your network interested in pushing through with us on these sort of ideas would be very much welcome. Now look, I'm not going to attempt to summarise the big ideas from this workshop, but you've all been absolutely fantastic. I'd like you all to give yourself a mutual clap for what you've contributed here. And of course you have my assurance that I, with other colleagues, maybe within NPA and beyond, will make sure that we get together all of the ideas from here, both for each group and collectively, what are the big ideas that have come out of here to help you all go forward, both individually and collectively with your own groups, but certainly between a lot more groups, we hope. Now, it is 5 o'clock, but Kevin has only got 2 questions that were in the question box, and he'd like to make some summative comments. Thanks, Kevin.